Cancer. Cartel, $1 million in debt. 2 houses, misdiagnosis. These are all things said by the same person. How does one person go from delayed art commissions to cancer, to a attempt, to $1 million in debt, to rich parents with 2 houses, to being followed by the cartel? Because apparently that's all part of the same story. Today, we're talking about an artist named Miss Tzu, and what started as a pretty normal commissions dispute slowly turned into one of the most baffling timelines I've covered in a while. Clients were waiting months, some over a year, refunds stopped coming, and every time pressure built, a new explanation appeared. Serious illness, extreme hardship, even cartel threats. Some people were refunded, but others weren't. Posts were deleted, replies were locked, and the more receipts surfaced, the harder it became to tell where the truth ended and where the story began. So who is Miss Tzu? And more importantly, what the hell actually happened? Miss Tzu is an online artist who built a following primarily through anime-style illustrations. She has experience working with larger companies, a pretty popular Twitter account, and a popular Instagram as well, and honestly, she is very talented. The appeal is undeniable, and her pieces are well priced for what they are. For example, on her VGen, a full body color doodle is priced at around $80, which is honestly on the lower end of the spectrum for this type of work and this level of quality. Her more fully rendered pieces with 2 or 3 characters go for around $340. On top of that, her social media presence alone inspires confidence. Her Instagram sits at just under 30,000 followers, while her Twitter account has over 130,000. And whether we like it or not, numbers like that tend to act as a shortcut for trust. To most people, those followers count signal legitimacy. She's also drawn fan art of well-known hololive VTubers like Nekomata Ukayu, as well as creators like Saba and Akuma Nimune, and she's worked with larger companies. When people see that, what they're really thinking is, okay, she's completed work for them, so she clearly delivers. That becomes proof, at least in people's mind, that she does churn out art and that commissioning her should be safe, in theory. On top of commissions, she also ran a Patreon where she regularly uploaded not safe for work artwork, and it's pretty popular too. And that's another revenue stream, but most importantly, another ongoing commitment with its own audience and expectations. So at that point, she wasn't just managing individual clients, she was balancing commissioned works, social media, and recurring Patreon content all at the same time. And at her price point, especially with that level of visibility, it's reasonable to assume the waiting list was already long, which makes the workload heavier and the margin for error much thinner. So it's really not surprising that VTubers who constantly need high quality visuals for events, covers, community rewards, brand visibility, and more jumped at the chance to commission her. From a client's perspective, it looked like a great deal. But what happens when there's so much demand that delays start piling up? And not just delays, but clients asking questions and getting no answers. Like most commission-based artists, her setup relied heavily on trust. Clients paid upfront with the expectation that the work would be delivered later, sometimes months down the line. That trust between artist and client and between creator and audience is what makes everything that follows matter. On December 12th, a client named Heretic published a call-out post on Twitter, the first of many that would follow. In that post, they explained that they had commissioned Miss Tzu back on January 9th, 2025, paying $330 upfront for a multi-character piece. After that payment, there were no communication at all until March 11th, over 2 months later, when Miss Tzu finally replied, saying she had been busy but that everything was fine. Then communication stopped again. The next response didn't come until April 22nd, when Miss Tzu said she was working on both the multi-character piece and a separate doodle, and promised the work would be done by that Friday. That Friday came and went again, and by that time Heretic still hadn't seen any work or even a sketch on the multi-pose art, mind you. Another month went by, and on May 21st, Heretic followed up again. Miss Tzu replied the next day, saying the work would be finished by the end of the week, but again, no specific details and no proof of progress. On May 30th, after Heretic asked for another update, Miss Tzu said she would send a doodle and a sketch for the multi-character piece within a few hours. 2 days later, on June 1st, the doodle was sent, but the multi-character sketch never arrived. More promises then followed. On June 6th, Miss Tzu said she would send a sketch that morning. That didn't happen, of course. Communication went silent again. And by June 26th, nearly 6 months after initial payment, Heretic reached out expressing concern over the lack of visible progress progress. Miss Tzu replies that the piece would be completed by the weekend and finally sent a sketch for the multi-character artwork. Heretic gave her feedback and was told an updated sketch would come soon. Then, on July 8th, Miss Tzu messaged again saying she'd be working on it and would have it done by July 14th. At the time of the post, that deadline had already passed and the commission still wasn't finished. But the situation didn't end there. On July 25th, Miss Tzu messaged Heretic asking where the final piece should be sent. That was strange because up to that point, there still hadn't been a completed commission, and just like before, nothing came of it. After that communication completely stopped, Heretic reached out again on August 1st, then on August 25, and again on September 11th, this time explicitly asking for a refund. By then, it had been 8 months since payment, and the only thing delivered at that point was a rough sketch that had arrived nearly 6 months in. According to Heretic, Miss Tzu's own terms and services stated that commission typically take 1 to 3 months to complete. In response to the refund request, Miss Tzu said she would refund half the payment and send the finished commission, claiming it was already done. The next day, she said she would be back in the afternoon and that Heretic would presumably receive both the refund and the art. That also never happened. That was the last direct message Heretic received. Heretic continued reaching out on September 15, on October 23rd, and on December 11th, but received no responses. By that point, almost an entire year had passed. Heretic said they had already hired another artist to complete the work and were no longer interested in a partial refund, especially since they could no longer appeal through PayPal as more than 180 days had passed since the original payment. And even after reading Miss Tzu's pinned statement later on, Heretic made it clear, regardless of any explanation given, it didn't resolve what they had personally gone through. And to talk briefly about that pinned comment, this is a tweet she posted on October 2nd. In it, she talks about working multiple jobs, not finishing school, and having to pay off her parents' debts. Over $53,000, which is nearly $1 million in her currency. She describes struggling with depression and stated that she attempted due to the pressure of her work and money problems. She emphasized that she is working every day, day and night, to fulfill her outstanding commissions, promises to communicate more consistently, and announces that she is closing commissions until further notice. She ends the message by thanking her fans for waiting for her and continuing to support her. And while this comment explains her perspective, it still didn't resolve the core issue, which is that many clients were left waiting, unpaid, and without clear answers. And the thing with PayPal is that it has a 180-day dispute window, and if her commissions drag on longer than this window, then refunds become impossible. Every missed deadline and every soon pushes things further past that point. So waiting, which Heretic did repeatedly and in good faith, didn't just mean more frustration, it meant losing the only real way to get their money back. But unbeknownst to Heretic, their post ended up exposing a much larger problem than they ever expected. After it went up, more people began speaking out with similar experiences involving Miss Tzu, and it didn't look good. Not long after Heretic's post, another tweet started getting traction. This one from Ebiko. Ebiko isn't a small creator. She has a sizable audience, especially on Twitch, so seeing her come forward with a story like this was genuinely surprising. You know, usually the way these things work is that the artist will deliver work for their larger account, get visibility, and then ignore the smaller creators. But not in this case. Everyone got equally screwed over. So she tweeted, "A moment of silence for this art I'll never receive and was so excited for. After spending $550 last March and being ghosted consistently, getting the runaround for 9 months about it being done, being sent later that day, being told the file was already emailed to me, I'm just sad." And immediately just with that tweet, the similarities to Heretic's experience stand out. Once again, we see months of waiting, being told the work is done, being told it's about to be sent, but they're not home right now, and then being told the file was already emailed, even though nothing was actually received. In a reply, someone summed up how absurd that excuse was, saying, "Absolutely unacceptable that she did not even offer to send a finished product again." Ebiko then clarifies what was really going on, responding plainly, "The product was never finished. It was a lie." Another user responded by saying it was clear there was no intention to finish the work and recommended legal action if a chargeback was no longer possible. And then there was another detail that made people pause. While these commissions were allegedly stalled for months, users pointed out that Miss Tzu had been extremely extremely active on Instagram during the same period, posting regularly and sharing new artwork, including commercial work. One reply noted, she's been super active on IG this past half year, literally posting 2 to 4 designs weekly, to which Ibiko could only respond, oof. And at that point, it became harder to dismiss this as a misunderstanding. After Ibiko's post, more voices started coming forward. One of them was indie VTuber named Cherry. She tweeted, I commissioned Miss Tzu back in April this year. After 2 months of waiting, I asked for an update and I got the non-background colored sketch. We had a good back and forth for a while, was lied to and ghosted for 3 months, but I got a refund. Big piece is a 4-month difference of work. Alongside that tweet, Cherry shared images of the piece she received, and looking at them, the issue becomes pretty obvious. There's very little rendering done at all. Aside from a small amount of shading on the skin, there's essentially no rendering on the clothes or the hair. The piece doesn't look polished or even finished. It looks rushed, more like a draft than a final product. And in that context, Cherry didn't just experience delays, she received what feels like an incomplete commission. Even though she eventually got a refund, the pattern still matches what we've seen so far. Long waits, partial progress, and work that doesn't reflect the time that supposedly went into it. And by that point, it's no longer just 1 or 2 people describing the same situation. It's starting to look consistent. Around the same time, another VTuber named Juicy spoke up. Juicy made it clear from the start that she hates confrontation. She wasn't looking to dogpile or stir drama, but felt she didn't really have a choice anymore. She wrote, I hate any kind of confrontation. I've requested my refund from Tzu, and I do wish her the best in what seems like a really horrible situation, but this kind of stuff worries me. I never rush artists, but there gets to a point where you gotta start chasing up what you spend hard-earned cash on. Not long after that, she added more context, explaining why this hits particularly hard for her. To add to the Tzu stuff, I am mainly just sad because I'm a tiny VTuber and any and all art I commission is really helpful in my growth and presence. It's really sad to not receive a piece you've been excited for and saved for. And this is an important perspective to include. For smaller creators, commissioning art isn't just cosmetic, it's an investment. It's money saved up, planned around, and meant to help them grow. So when that work never arrives, it's not just disappointing, it actively sets them back. At this point, you have large creators, indie VTubers, and smaller creators all describing different version of the same experience. And the picture that starts to form isn't flattering. One other post that stood out came from Mifuyu, another VTuber who was careful to be very measured about her own experience. She wrote, I also had a difficult experience commissioning Miss Tzu, though I want to be clear that she did not scam me. She explained that after several months with very little communication and a hard time getting any kind of work in progress, she was eventually able to request a refund through VGen, and that refund did go through. Mifuyu also made it clear that she understood artists can struggle. She acknowledged that life, personal issues, and burnout can affect delivery, and that she didn't seem interested in escalating the situation further. But she followed this up with a second post that adds important context. She shared the sketch she received after 5 months of waiting. She said she absolutely adored the piece, but also felt sad about it because the bunny outfit was completed off from her personal design, and with so much uncertainty about whether it could ever be fixed or finished, she decided to move forward with a refund. In her words, things ended on a good note, but only after months of waiting and ambiguity. In the replies, another creator suggested that Miss Tzu might be dealing with an uncontrollable situation. They speculated she may have taken on too many commissions and that, due to outside factors, she was no longer able to keep up. In a follow-up reply, Mifuyu expanded on her thoughts. She wrote, that's also why I think we understand the people behind the art, and things like this don't get brought up or exposed a lot in the community. Delays like this are something that at times are inevitable, and why me and Tzu separate on a good note in the end. There's a lot of things that can influence an artist's capability to deliver art in specific time spans. So from another person that struggles to make art because of personal problems as well, I think this was a completely understandable reason why we had to move on with the calm and refund it. I appreciated her work a bunch, but in the end, it just wasn't meant to be, and that's okay. I guess the one thing that peeps mostly just wish for is transparency and communication to know if these pieces will ever be completed one day. And she's right. For the most part, most clients are willing to wait longer and deal with unexpected problems if those things are communicated properly. And not just communicated once, but also followed up on. Not saying you'll send a sketch the next day and then disappear. If you can't send a sketch the next day, that needs to be communicated too. Otherwise, it starts to feel off. It starts to look suspicious. And then there's the other issue. The idea of an uncontrollable situation keeps coming up. Claims of serious personal hardships, of things going very, very wrong behind the scenes. And sure, that genuinely sucks. And it is something people can empathize with. But people face hardships every day and still have to show up for their 9-to-5 jobs. The clients commissioning these artworks aren't faceless entities either. They're also people spending their own hard-earned money. One doesn't really cancel out the other. And that leads to my next point. Because once these explanations start piling up, the question stops being how bad was the situation and becomes whether the situation even existed in the way it was described at all. Around this time, I also received an anonymous tip from another VTuber who shared their own experience commissioning Miss Tzu. According to them, they commissioned 2 pieces, one on May 5th and another one on May 7th, 2025, paying nearly $800 in total. On June 16, they asked for an update. There was no response for 12 days. When Miss Tzu finally replied, she said she'd send an update later that day. And guess what? That didn't happen. The first actual update didn't arrive until July 19th, and even then, it was only a sketch for one of the 2 pieces. After that, communication stopped again. No updates, no progress on the character sheet, nothing. For over a month. And this is worth emphasizing. Miss Tzu's own TOS lists 1 to 3 month turnaround time. And by this point, they were already approaching and arguably passing that window. And during this same period, she was still actively posting online. Fan arts for Saba's debut, regular activity on Instagram and Twitter, engagement farming, which understandably made paying clients feel like they simply weren't a priority for her. Things only changed once this VTuber felt forced to escalate. They mentioned opening a PayPal dispute and going public so others could make informed decisions. That's when Miss Tzu finally responded, promising a significant update the very next night. But once again, nothing was sent. A week later, the client followed up, pointing out that it had been nearly a week past the promised delivery date and asking when they could expect the piece. Miss Tzu replied with a familiar explanation, that she thought the files had already been sent, that she'd resend them later that day, and that delays were due to recently getting a new job, but that she'd set a reminder. Another day passed. Still nothing. When questioned again, she replied saying she wasn't home yet, that she was out of town, and that she was on her way back. Only after all of that were the files finally sent. And by now, the pattern should sound familiar to you. The same recycled excuses, claiming files were already sent when they weren't, long gaps of silence, new circumstance introduced every time a deadline is missed, clients being put in the position of constantly chasing updates, pushing deadlines back, and doing all the emotional labor just to get what they paid for. It really does start to feel like this only works if clients don't talk to each other. And what makes this especially ironic is that during the same period, Miss Tzu tweeted about how people were being mean to artists online, how normalized it's become to get hate over small things. Girl. After all these posts began circulating, Miss Tzu finally responded publicly. She posted a formal statement, writing, "Hello, I just want to address this formally. I haven't scammed anyone. There isn't really any excuse for anything I've done, just explanation, and I'll get to the point. Unfortunately, as I've mentioned in other posts, I've bitten off more than I can chew. I tried to pay off my parents' debt constantly, but as time goes on, I've just hit a point where right now I can't continue to do that. I'm trying to refund all of my commissions and slowly messaging my clients. You can ask anyone I've refunded in the past weeks. I no longer have the mental bandwidth to continue commissions. In my previous post that I pinned, I mentioned how I was very sorry to my clients for taking so long, and that still stands. There's absolutely no excuses, and I will do better. I'll be refunding all my commissions at the moment. I hope you all find it in your heart to forgive me. I'll be messaging people back today and refunding them soon. Thank you." Not long after that, she posted a shorter follow-up, writing, "Hello, I'll be messaging all my clients to be refunding them in the coming weeks. I address things coherently here, but TLDR, I took more than I can chew to pay parents' debts, and it caught up to me. I'm not a scammer. I just became sloppy and irresponsible. I'm very sorry to everyone and all I've affected." On the surface, this reads like accountability. She denies scamming, admits she overextended herself, explained her circumstance, and promises refunds. The way this response played out raised new concerns. The replies on these posts were locked, meaning clients couldn't publicly respond underneath them, and she has a history of already not responding to DMs, so even if they do reach out to her, will she even respond? And around the same time, the original call-out post post that started this wave was also taken down. And then, not long after that, Miss Tsu's own response posts were deleted. That's when people began to question what was happening. Because if the goal is transparency and accountability, deleting your own statements make things harder to track. It removes a public record of what was promised, when it was promised, and how it was supposed to be resolved. Did she finish contacting all of her clients? Did all of her clients even see this post? Now, that doesn't automatically mean someone is trying to cover their tracks, of course, but it does raise a reasonable question. If you're taking responsibility for mistakes you openly admit to making, why remove the statement where you did exactly that? And that question is part of why this situation didn't end with her response. And here's important context, because before a lot of people felt comfortable pushing back, Miss Tsu had already shared something much heavier publicly. At one point, Miss Tsu publicly posted about her mental health, saying she was depressed, medicated, and that she had recently experienced a attempt. She apologized for being unresponsive and said she was slowly working through her commissions. And to be clear, mental health struggles are real. Depression is real. Suicide is not something to take lightly. On their own, these things don't look suspicious. It's actually when you zoom out and then more stuff starts to get uncovered that it started raising eyebrows. So at this point, the original call-out post is taken down as Miss Tsu, as I already explained. On paper, the situation looked settled. And technically, that should have been the end of the story, but it isn't. We were later tipped off by another anonymous source who said they had commissioned Miss Tsu and had not been refunded, despite these public promises, which directly contradicts what was said in her response. So she lied. And then there was something else. A reply under the original erratic callout caught a lot of people's attention. From Cheru, another VTuber and artist. And unlike some of the other posts, Cheru wasn't just sharing a bad experience, she was raising concerns after attempting to commission Miss Tsu herself. According to Cheru, she got spun around the block for over 14 months. 14 months! Can you imagine waiting for an artwork and being given excuses for over a year? At that point, you're not even commissioning art anymore, you're being put on a subscription plan. And instead of just walking away, Cheru started paying close attention. She tracked Miss Tsu's explanation over time and noticed the same things repeating over and over again. The same promises that files would be sent soon, the same claim that information had been lost, the same delays with no follow-up. At one point in January, after 8 months with no sketch and no real update, Cheru confronted Miss Tsu directly. She even pointed out that a friend of hers had commissioned around the same time and hadn't received updates either. She added something along the lines of, "I know you're super busy with volunteer work and personal struggles, but you're also still accepting new commissions, and I'm honestly at a loss." And then Miss Tsu had the gall to respond with this: "Hey, do you mind us moving to Discord since a lot of my DMs on here kinda got lost/deleted by Twitter?" Huh? Excuse me? I've never heard of Twitter deleting DMs, ever, except maybe after Elon updated the direct message feature on X, which is awful by the way, but that update only happened in 2025, not 2024. And yes, according to Cheru, many of the excuses being given about debt, about personal hardship, and other extreme circumstances also didn't add up. She wrote, "I believe Miss Tsu is lying about the debt, about the cancer, cartel, and probably more too. I don't think many people can see my call-out post. I QRT'd, but I think these screenshots are very damning to the situation and more people need to see them." And in another post, "Alright, this is a big call out post, bring on the white knights. Frankly, I don't believe anything Miss Tsu has ever said. She can disprove whatever she wants in the comments, but I think she painted a wild sob story for everyone to fall for her to get quick money. Last page is damning." And this is where the story takes on a much darker turn, because this isn't just about missed deadlines anymore, it's about whether the explanations used to justify them were ever true to begin with. In the first screenshot, we already see a mess. There's a whole list of people, nearly 20, still waiting for work. 4 of them says they've been waiting over a year with no communication. Shockers. Others are still waiting on refunds, and it's the same story across the board. Constant promises, deadlines being set, and then nothing to show for. How is one person juggling this many people at the same time? Like, genuinely, how is that even possible without something going seriously wrong? And that's just the surface level stuff, mind you. Then we get into what I can only describe as the most insane explanations. In one screenshot, there's a tweet from January where she says she just got back from a children's event, which she was likely volunteering at. Yes, because according to her TOS, she also volunteers at an orphanage. Then there's another tweet where she claims that she dropped out of high school around age 15 and has been helping her parents with debt and money problems ever since. Then there's a screenshot of her pinned post saying she's been working non-stop on commissions to pay off her parents' debts. Then there's a tweet exchange where she says her parents' level of debt is normal in her culture. And Chiru immediately clocks that, responding basically like, if the debt keeps getting worse, you're not helping your parents anymore, you're enabling them. And honestly, she's right. I don't know of any culture where being almost $1 million in debt is just normal and fine. And then, and this is where it really stops making sense, in another post from November, she tweets amazing news, saying her parents finally bought a property so she can start a cafe. Not long after that, she says her mom bought a house and that she'll be renting part of it to her so she can open her coffee shop. But weren't her parents supposedly drowning in debts? How do you go from nearly $1 million in debt to buying new property? And not just property, but a house big enough to rent part of it out for a cafe dream. None of this add up at all. In the next screenshot, we see Discord exchange, and mixed into those screenshots are older tweets from Miss Tzu that have aged terribly, such as, when I die, I'll pick one random follower to take over my account. I pray Miss Tzu doesn't become controversial. And a retweet that says, I'm so sorry for what I'm about to post, but just know I did it for money, so even though I will no longer have shame or morals, I will have dollars.
Bruh.
Already, yikes. The first Discord logs are from 2023, where Miss Tzu is talking with someone about moving back to Mexico. And that part alone isn't strange, people move, that's normal. What is strange though, is what she says next. This is gonna sound so spoiled, but my dad wants 2 houses. 2 houses? What do you mean 2 houses? I thought y'all could barely afford bankruptcy. Did they suddenly win the lottery? Did I miss a chapter somewhere? And then a year later in 2024, Miss Sue says that her parents are more than comfy. So which one is it, Sue? Are they rich or are they drowning in debt? And hold up, it's not just any debt either, because in her case, it somehow gets even wilder. It's cartel debts.
That's what the kids call epic fail.
Yup, because on October 25, 2024, Miss Sue tweeted several times claiming that her family and herself were being threatened by the cartel. She added, we are okay, we have cameras now and like 4 locks, but we're extra careful now. I live in Tijuana, so it's kind of dangerous here. Ooh, emoji. And then there's this one. I have the cartel following me and my family and I'm drawing hot girls. Follow me for more updates. Heart, kissy emoji, heart, heart. Which, I'm sorry, but that's an absolutely insane thing to say in the same breath as claiming cartel threats. And then just over a week later, on November 4th, suddenly everything was fine. She tweeted that she could finally go home safely and thanked her audience for their kindness and support. To recap, we've had cartel threats, locks, cameras, danger, all in a short amount of time, and then a clean resolution in a matter of days. And the thing with stories like this is that you almost have to empathize with them, because if you don't, you immediately look like a heartless, cynical internet user who doesn't believe anyone's pain. But what if it's all just a front? What if these extreme stories aren't meant to explain delays, but to buy time? And that's the uncomfortable question sitting underneath all of this. And also, I'm not an expert on this or anything, but if someone really is following you and keeping tabs on your family, would tweeting about it like this actually be safe? I don't know. That part feels off to me. There are just too many things in this story that just don't line up. Too many coincidences, too many explanations that conveniently appear right when pressure starts building. I just have this feeling that she's lying. I just can't prove it yet. Oh, and for the pièce of résistance, according to a user named Tran, Miss Tzu announced that she had cancer. It garnered a bunch of sympathy from her followers, and then she just silently deleted the tweet, just like she did with her response. By not clearing it up publicly to her 100k followers, whether it was false positive or not real at all, she stood to gain far more sympathy, and money of course. Only later did she briefly mention it in a livestream that very few people watch, where she clarified it was a misdiagnosis. Like, what the hell. Thankfully, it seems I am not the only one baffled by these claims, because these posts for some reason got very little traction. It seems like it was just all buried, far away from anyone's eyes. But at least Cheru was relentless. And she adds in another set of tweets, and this is where things get a lot more concrete, she pushes back on the idea that this was just accepting too many commissions. According to her, this wasn't just a small backlog, this was a ridiculous amount of money, likely thousands of dollars total, with a lot of individuals' commissions being over $200 each. And as I've mentioned before, because so much time passed, a lot of these commissions are not past PayPal's 180-day refund window, meaning some clients literally can't get their money back anymore. Cheru also points out that Miss Tzu was actively taking new commissions while fully aware that she already had tons of people waiting. And to make matters worse, her own TOS told clients not to bug her, which many of them actually respected, only for that silence to completely backfire on them when refund deadlines just ran out. And Cheru continues saying, the whole situation is really fishy. It's not a normal situation at all. If she wasn't called out, who's to say she wouldn't continue doing this for years? I didn't post my situation originally because I just thought I got unlucky, but the amount of people coming forward is absolutely ridiculous. She also briefly brings up the possibility that some of the work may have involved AI, and I'm not going to get into that too deeply here, but the fact that people are even questioning it at all kind of says everything. When communication falls apart and deadlines keep slipping and explanations don't add up, people start side-eyeing everything, and that's really the problem. And that's not even getting into all the weird inconsistencies. She says she didn't finish up high school, yet she works as a teacher. She also volunteers at an orphanage. She supposedly has 3 part-time jobs, but at the same time, she's able to produce 40 pieces of art in 3 months and claims she's working on commissions day and night. She's being followed by the cartel. Her parents are supposedly $1 million in debt, yet somehow rich enough to afford 2 houses. She also had cancer and also had a attempt. Like, at some point, no one can be that unlucky. Or I don't know, maybe I've just been covering too many people lately with eerily similar patterns that later turned out to be lying or completely unstable. Honestly, I don't know anymore. And once all of this went public, the backlash was immediate. Miss Tzu stopped taking commissions on VGen. Her Instagram was set to private. Her Twitter was locked down as well. Basically, most public-facing accounts went into lockdown mode. Which, sure, that's pretty much the expected response when something like this blows up. But here's the part people noticed. Despite all of that, her Patreon is still running, the Not Safe for Work one. And according to at least one user, she's allegedly still accepting donations through Ko-fi. So commissions are closed, the socials are private, but the Patreon, well, the Gooners never mind these things. I think it's also important to talk about why situations like these are so hard to push back on against in the first place, especially in the VTuber community. Artists are a vital part of the ecosystem. VTubers heavily rely on them for models, branding, events, debuts, everything. And because of that, there's this unspoken pressure to be patient, to be understanding, to not rock the boat, especially when the artist is talented. But that same dynamic also makes bad actors much harder to root out. Some people have speculated about what might have been happening behind the scenes, whether clients were being strung along in the hope they'd forget, or whether old clients were being paid off with newer clients' money. Some other people have also suggested a less malicious explanation. One user speculated that Miss Tzu may have been lying out of shame, spiraling, covering delays with bigger and bigger stories, maybe even hiding more issues because admitting the truth felt impossible. And that is a perspective worth considering. But the world calls for distinct measures. And whether or not this was malicious or not, the outcome doesn't change in the end. Thousands of dollars in commissions gone, clients left waiting, deadlines missed, and a growing pile of explanation used to buy time. And in the end, intentional or not, empathy became a tool. And in this case, it was weaponized. And that's all I've got for today's video. If you've enjoyed the deep dive, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell so you never miss a future upload. But before you go, quick update. Market holiday merch is finally live. We haven't done merch in a while, so I figured we'd do a small run this time. There's only 2 products. First, we've got the acid wash Yandere Rima t-shirt. I love this thing, but fair warning, we still need 18 more backers in the next 2 weeks for it to go into production. You only need to put down a $2 pledge, and you'll only be charged if the campaign actually gets fulfilled. And if shirts aren't your thing, we also have this really cute pin, perfect for bags, jacket, or just spicing up your outfit. Also, Also, quick mention, if you use GamerSubs, you can use my code CLOP for 10% off everything, or grab their free samples if you just want to try the product out. And if you want extra content, reactions, and more unfiltered commentary, or simply want to support the channel, my Patreon is linked in the description below. And if you want to hang out with the community, join our Discord at discord.gg/Rima. This is where everything happens. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. And what started as a pretty normal commission... I missed... Okay, I have to redo this entire paragraph. At least in people's minds, that she does churn out art and that commissions her... On December 12th, a client named Heratic published a call-out post on Twitter. The first... and a separate doodle. And Mr. Reply said according to Mr. This... She described struggling with depression and state that she... which is that many clients... Every missed deadline and every soon push things... But not in this case. Everyone got excluding... we had a good back and forth for a lot. I never rush artists, but there gets to be a point where you gotta start chasing up what you spend hard-earned cash. Okay, I need to reread this. I butchered this way too much. But there gets to a point where you gotta start chasing up what you spent hard-earned cash. Blah, blah, blah. Is this a rap? But she followed this. Come on, focus. Exactly. She wrote, exactly. That's also why I think we understand the people behind the art and things like this don't get brought up. A week later, I will say this, but that there's absolutely no excuses. There's absolutely no excuses. Hello, I'll be messaging all my clients to be refunding. Hello, I'll be messaging all my clients to be refunding them in the coming weeks. I address things coherently here, but TLDR, I took more than I can chew to pay parents' debts, and it caught off. So at this point, the original call-out post is taken down by Miss Tsu, as I promised. And then and that she'll be renting part of it. Not long after, she certainly doesn't call them more than comfy and... But just know I did it for money, so even though... I'm so sorry for what I'm about to post, but just so... The first Discord logs are from 2020, and that's the uncomfortable question, Cine. Oh, and for the pièce of résistance... Oh, no, I said it to keep it quiet.
We are looking at how to pronounce these phrases, as well as how to say interesting but often confusing expressions from French. Pièce de résistance.
Oh, and for the pièce of résistance, and you'll only be charged if the you only need to put down a $2 pledge, and if you... This is an easy line, why am I struggling? And grab their samples if you just...